My name is Diane Ryan, and I'm assistant professor here at TCC and a member of the Open VA Planning Group. I will also be moderating the first panel this morning. If during the course of the day, if anybody needs anything or you need assistance, please feel free to see me, and I'll be glad to direct you to the right person. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Edna Colavani, President of TCC, who will be giving the opening remarks for today. Dr. Colavani?
Good morning, Diane. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Did you wake up this morning saying conference, beach, golfing?
No, bed.
No, but a bed. See, that's another one. Yeah, but amazing how many of you decided to come to the conference. Good for you. I really commend you for taking this whole topic so serious and continuing the call that Laura Fornish put out several years ago, the then Secretary of Education in Virginia, to explore the use and application of digital learning and technologies and the open educational resources. I don't know whether Virginia is a leader in this regard. I do know from our activities in open educational resources with our zero textbook degree program that we have gained national attention. In talking with some of our folks and partners at Lumen, we do know that Virginia is in the forefront of this very important topic. And so I commend you for continuing that pursuit and exploring how can we provide learning to a better extent and a better benefit for our students, as well as some of the cost savings that come along with it. Sure, you'll hear from Daniel DeMart, our Chief Academic Officer, how the invention of the open educational resources in our business administration degree program has energized not only the faculty, but also the students, and our preliminary data on the learning outcomes and the learning gains by students and retention indicate that there is greater benefit by the students. They seem to be more engaged, and I think our faculty have become much more energized as a process. And those of you who have begun to explore all of those, I think you'll probably relate to that very well. Looking at the agenda this morning, I'm really impressed with the topics and the kind of caliber of people that you have on your panels. I understand that you have a goal that at the end of the day, you may develop recommendations for state-level policy and strategic intentional directions on how to come about the application of these open educational resources within Virginia. And really, again, I commend you for doing that and being that visionary. The end in all of this is what is best for our students. And we know, again, that is really, really incredibly beneficial to the students in many, many different ways. So congratulations. Thank you for your attendance, and I look forward to the report outs. I'm not going to be here with you. I have the unfortunate thing to do is to attend our Alumni Association tent in Norfolk with the Virginia Wine Festival. And so, yeah, it's duty calls, so have to go. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Colavani. I'll be right behind you after 4 o'clock. Just to give you a snapshot of what today is going to look like, we'll have 4 panels today, and in just a couple of minutes I'll introduce the first panel. And then each panelist will present their particular OER or Open Ed project. So today is not just about open educational resources, it's about infrastructure, pedagogy, and where we go as a state here, where we move forward in the state of Virginia with Open Ed. Our first panel this morning is Anita Waltz. Anita, you want to come up and take a seat? Daniel DeMart and Jennifer Kidd. Jennifer's having a little bit of technical. So I will go ahead and read their bios to you, and we'll get started with Anita. Anita Walsh has been a librarian for the past 12 years. She's worked in a wide range of library environments and library and projects, including the World Bank, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, a short stint as a middle school librarian, and a nearly 100% telework environment for ERIC Digital Library. She's been on the library faculty at Virginia Tech for over 1 year and holds the position of Assessment, Open Education, and Online Learning Environments Librarian. She is also the subject liaison for economics and mathematics. Anita holds a master's degree in library and information science from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She attended last year's Open VA conference, where she was first introduced to the amazing world of open education. Dr. Daniel DeMart is Vice President for Academic Affairs and Chief Academic Officer at TCC. He is the visionary and the driving force behind open education initiatives here, starting with a Z degree in January of 2013. Since then, he has spoken at numerous conferences about the role of the Z degree in student success, including a summit at the White House. The Z degree has been nominated for a national award and awarded the Excellent in Education Award in April of 2014. Dr. Jennifer Kidd is one of 3 recipients of ODU's Teaching with Technology Award for 2012. In the past few years, she pioneered the development of a student-driven wiki textbook in her courses. The success of ODU's wiki textbook echoed throughout the academic community, and Kidd was invited by the White House as a part of the National Lab Day, an initiative to increase science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education, to speak about the student-written textbooks. So thank you all for coming this morning, and Anita, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Let's hope this works. As a librarian, I do a lot of training, and sometimes the technology works and sometimes it does not, so it's very interesting. Are we getting anything on the monitors? Not yet. Coming? No? Okay, so this will be a virtual presentation then. The slides are available or will be available to you later. So I have been in this position for 1 year. My charge was to explore open educational resources. What could those be like at Virginia Tech? What could we do? What is our context? What opportunities do we have to lead or to partner in OER initiatives? So we have 3,700 faculty. We have 29,000 plus students. Our context is very much a residential undergraduate experience plus online. We have graduate degrees. The tenure system is a big deal at Virginia Tech. So faculty choice really reigns. We don't have an institutional mandate at this point to implement open educational resources. So those are some really important parts of our context. So as someone who is exploring and disseminating information, what exactly should we be conveying? What message? So I had 4 different points: why, what, where, and how. And these are kind of going to outline this really brief chat. So the context of copyright. How many of you feel like, I know exactly what to do. I know what I can share. I know what context. I know what I can copy. I can put this in my presentation. How many of you feel really confident in that? Okay, that's more hands than I normally get. And then how many of you are librarians? I just want to see the comparison. Okay, so lots of librarians put their hands up for that first one as well. So the context of copyright is really important in open licensing. Secondly, can we get a big hooray for we should be talking to our folks on campus about what is available, that high quality, free, online, copyright unrestricted educational resources in various formats exist. Hooray! Okay, so third point, where finding OER can be really challenging, and the libraries can help with that process. And then fourth point, how OER use often requires that we adjust our courses, we adjust our spaces, we adjust our pedagogy, we adjust our approach, we adjust the resources themselves. There's a lot of adjustment that is needed. And thirdly, that you can choose to share your work through open licensing. So one of the questions that I usually close with is asking faculty, what will you share? What will you look for? And put the ball in their court. I have a wonderful slide I'd love to show you. There's an article that's been helpful to me in this process called The Beauty of Some Rights Reserved. This is written by a librarian, Molly Kleinman, at the University of Michigan in 2008. And it's really helpful in shaping my approach to how I talk with faculty about open resources and what's available. So you found it on the web. You can use it, right? As you're teaching people? No. All right. So what does it mean to be openly licensed? It's free, right? You can openly license things that are free. So they don't cost money to the end user, but you have the additional benefit of being able to revise, remix, redistribute. You don't need to navigate the fair use questions of resources. I have a whole slideshow for you. So there are a lot of different open educational resources available. Many of them are interactive. We have everything from textbooks in HTML, OpenStax textbooks in PDF and in print, music, images from Flickr. We have content from MOOCs. We have simulations, films, and there are a lot of different places that you can look to find resources. In terms of what we are doing at the libraries at Virginia Tech, we, and I should say I mainly, working on a lot of copyright instruction and consultation, collaborating with faculty on OER development, hosting or looking into hosting faculty-created materials. I've met with student groups. So I've met with the student advisory board of our library as well as our student government. We're trying to model open licensing by showing open licenses on things that we create. And then a few upcoming things that we have are a textbook adoption workshop, and we're exploring more open publishing, actually production. The library at Virginia Tech is a founding member of the Library Publishing Coalition, and so we're looking into more open monographs, production of those. Thank you. In the spring of 2014, I hosted a panel I had 3 panelists, all faculty members, who had created resources. 2 of them open, 1 of them not open. We had a very interesting discussion about quality and the business model for open educational resources. This was kind of a kickoff event to get people talking about open educational resources. And there were quite a few different groups that were able to come. So we had a number of instructional designers, librarians, teaching faculty, all in one room who had never met each other, talking about this. And that really was a sort of our goal in getting a conversation going. A few other things that we've done. There's an OER finding guide on the library website. There's an elevator speech for library liaisons. So library liaisons, subject liaisons who need background in what open educational resources are, have a place to go to find basic information that they can convey to their faculty members. We have a display of OpenStax textbooks in the library, a blog posting about that, which was picked up by CNN, an FAQ handout that I created to answer all the questions that people have about that display, since I can't stand there all of the time. And then I've used a number of different inquiry tools, faculty survey, a lot of cold calling, a lot of sitting in on faculty discussions, and just trying to find out what are faculty doing, how can we insert ourselves into their workflow, what are the issues, what are their questions. We've had 2 open textbooks that I know of adopted, which is not very many, but considering that this is brand new, that's pretty exciting. And then we try to figure out, what are faculty doing? What are they producing? We have a lot of faculty right now who are adopting customized textbooks from commercial publishers. We have other faculty who are pulling in all kinds of multimedia, open multimedia into their courses. And then we have a lot of faculty authors. We're a 4-year institution. We have faculty write textbooks, and a lot of those faculty work at Virginia Tech, so we have that kind of added challenge. I want to make the case that libraries should be involved with open educational resources, those types of initiatives. Librarians are curious information problem solvers. We are concerned about information access. We have trusted relationships with faculty. We are expert searchers. We have subject expertise. We have institutional repositories. We're knowledgeable about copyright. We curate collections, and many of us are already engaged in open initiatives. Other libraries around the country are doing some more advanced things, such as incentivizing OER adoption and authoring. They're working closely with instructional designers, or they're doing course redesign, and they're curating collections of OER. Some are even authoring open textbooks. So our current challenges at Virginia Tech are to find OER champions and leverage them to reach the other faculty members. Faculty listen best to other faculty. We also want to make it easier for faculty to find, adapt, and use openly licensed resources. We want to identify and integrate our support into faculty workflows, encourage student engagement, and we want to measure our impact. There are a number of communities. For those of you librarians who are here, there are 3 different communities that I would suggest may be helpful for your work. There's a Spark Libraries and OER forum that meets monthly on a teleconference. They also have a listserv. There's a blended librarian community, and there's the Community College Consortium for Open Educational Resources. Even if you're in a four-year institution, they will let you lurk on their list and go to their webinars. So I would encourage you to, if you are a librarian, these are 3 great places where you can get support. And if you would like to talk about possibly starting a Virginia OER Library Working Group, I would love to talk to you. There's not a lot going on, it feels like, in the 4-year institution space, and trying to figure out why that is and do something about it. So I would welcome your input. Thank you.
Load Anita's slides on a flash drive, and so during the question and answer period, if she wants to show some of the things that she was referring to, she'll be able to do so then. So, Dr. DeMart, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Good. So I've been asked to answer the question, what resources did it take for us to implement our Z degree? Does everybody know what our Z degree is? No. So Tidewater has launched a pilot. We're in our 2nd year of offering our Associate of Business Administration degree entirely with open educational resources, which means, among other things, there is no cost for textbooks to our students. And I'll touch more on that as I get into this. So the question of what resources did it take for us to get to where we are? You know, I've separated them sort of simply in my mind into 2 categories. The first is the obvious resources, and then the not so obvious. In the category of the obvious, it takes money, right, to develop the courses, develop the content, some of the consulting that we've engaged in, to create OER, the analytics that are involved in the model that we have implemented. That's first. Second, and probably most important, are people. The people resources, starting with the leadership, faculty, support services, and obviously you've got to have students who are willing to take courses where they don't have to purchase a textbook. Big toe, right? And then last is the educational resources themselves. So the obvious I would put in those 3 categories. It's the not so obvious where I think we need to spend our time, and hopefully what we have learned may translate to some help on your end, should you pursue or decide to pursue a path that Tidewater has. So going back through the not so obvious, starting with the money. You know, I'm sure if I was sitting out there hearing this, I'd be thinking, yeah, if I had money, buckets of money, I could do the same thing. However, we did not have buckets of money. What we did was reallocate funds that we already have. You know, we weren't given a couple $100,000 and encouraged to go create this. We were left to our own devices to find the resources to set it up ourselves. And in looking at money that already exists, you know, that requires a reprioritizing of how those funds are spent. making some decisions on the level of priority, sometimes in some cases what doesn't get funded, and a shift in where we're headed as a college. So it takes some thought, some creativity in order to get to the funding that has helped us get to where we are with our Z degree. Moving on to the next is the people, and again, the most critical part of what we have done. What we have accomplished with the Z degree really begins, I think, with a commitment from leadership. And what has been key here is, I heard the word once already, we did not mandate. There is no mandate at Tidewater for faculty to offer courses in the way we are. In fact, it's just the opposite. We have a team of faculty who have taken hold of this and have claimed it as theirs. That is, I think, perhaps the most critical reason why I see other colleges have not done what we have done in establishing an entire degree. When you look around the country, you see pockets of areas that are doing this. I do not understand to this day why more colleges are not offering entire programs using OER. We have proven it can be done. And there's some more proving ground there for us, and I'll touch on that as we get into this. It can be done. We need to move past the pockets and find our people resources to expand it far beyond, those pockets of areas. So people, it starts with the leadership. Now, with the leadership, there are essentially two key things I think that the leaders bring to the table to help make this happen. First and foremost is they create the conditions, what I call create the conditions. They provide that support, they find the resources, and then we get out of the way. We let faculty do their thing. We get pulled into that conversation when we're needed. We let go and let them run the course as they need to. One example, when we first launched, and Lumen Learning was brought in to help us figure out the path we were going to take moving forward, we looked very close at Canvas as the tool to help us put all of our content together and offer our Z courses. Our faculty said in looking at Canvas, it was too soon to learn a new LMS at the same time we were learning about OER. And so because of that, we pulled back on looking at a new LMS and focused on what we're using with Blackboard. That's the kind of thing I think you allow your faculty to guide you in making sure that you stay on course and work with what's going to work for them. There are other examples, but that's one I would say from a leadership perspective that he helped create those conditions. Second thing is, and just as important, is policy. It sounds so obvious when you talk about OER that, yeah, of course you should have a policy, right? Well, I'll tell you that when it comes to institution-level policy, you are hard-pressed to find anything out there. There's very little. There's lots of other policy, national level, regional, but there's very little that we've been able to find at the institution level. What we have done is we've created our own policy. Actually, we just went through our second iteration. It's out there for anyone to see and look at and use, adapted to fit, for your purposes. But what that policy does is a couple of very critical things for us. One, it grounds what we are doing in purpose. What we are doing with our Z degree has a very tight purpose. Essentially two things. To open up access for our students and to refine the teaching process for our faculty based on analytics, something that is not being done anywhere else that we know of. Two key purposes. It also ties it to our mission. What we are doing very tightly connects to student success and what we're about at Tidewater. And then as you work through the policy, should you take a look at it, it covers all the critical things you would expect to see in a policy. It sets standards for how OER is used at Tidewater. It talks about the quality and the selection of OER, content itself and how that's done. It talks about support mechanisms outside of the classroom to help faculty and students. It shares expectations. One expectation for us as a faculty member can go through 2 cycles of continuous improvement before they take that course and make it available in the Creative Commons. That's what works for us. We can run it a couple of times, work out the bugs, get comfortable with it, and then it must be put out. Those kinds of things you find in our policy. And that's part of what I mean when I say creating the conditions for what we're doing to be done and be done well. Second resource, the faculty. And not just any faculty. In fact, I see several of our Z degree faculty in the room. Would you stand, please? These are not just any faculty. These are innovators who've been willing to step out on a limb, set their textbook aside, and take the risk of teaching a course that they designed using OER. That takes some guts. It takes some willingness to address what you hear from colleagues, stepping out on that limb, making sure that you've got the resources to support you should you go out on that limb. We're very fortunate at Tidewater to have, at least initially, our first core of 13 faculty who've grabbed this and made it their own. We're in the second year of a pilot. We just added another 12, 13 faculty to join the 13 that started, so that group will double in size. We begin to expand what we're doing beyond what we've done the first pilot year. In terms of faculty, you also need, I would say, a champion, but I would qualify that by saying we don't just have any champion, we have a secret weapon in Linda Williams. Linda, would you please stand? Really? You'll hear from Linda a little bit later, and you'll understand, I think, listening to her, why what we have done has been so successful and why you all need a Linda to accomplish what we've done, leading a team of faculty. You also need a Diane Ryan. Diane is the reason why this meeting is here today, has helped organize it, set it up, lead it, and set the course for where we're headed, hopefully on a broader scale beyond Tidewater. So I'd like to thank Diane as well. Diane, you behind the curtain still? Wizard of Oz. Then, of course, you need support staff. Our academic advisors, our counselors, others around the college, the academic deans needed to know and be aware of what we're doing with the Z degree right down to the course section level. It doesn't work unless you have everybody plugged in. And so you round out what happens in the classroom with those services outside the classroom. And then the last piece, and also critical, is having a partner, a consultant who's more than just the kind of partner that's going to tell you what you need to do to be successful, that's going to listen, take it in, and help guide and create those conditions. And that's what we've had in Lumen Learning with Kim Thanos and David Wiley. Kim, would you please stand as well? If you haven't met Kim, you want to before you leave today. Lumen has been a fantastic partner for us. What they brought to the table early on and continue to help us with is the expertise in the OER itself, the curation. They've helped us with the course design. And now perhaps the most critical thing they're helping us with is the analytics on the back end, where we can give faculty feedback based on data to help guide how their course will look or can look moving forward. That's what it took to get us where we are with the Z degree. The question we're wrestling with now is what resources are going to take to sustain what we've created. There are 4 things I would put in that category for now. First is training. We have, thanks to Linda Williams, a training program for any new faculty member who we bring on board. It's a 6 to 8 module program that when they finish will give them a pretty good idea, start to finish, for us what a Z degree in an OER course looks like, how to design it, how to license it, the basic questions that they would need to get started. So we have the training program in place. What we're doing with that program is we're pushing it out to our librarians. What we have done, and you've heard some of this from Anita, we have redefined the role of our librarian at Tidewater and to begin to incorporate in an intentional way an OER role. And in doing that, one of the things that we're going to try to do is we're going to try to have at the campus level here at least one librarian who's in place to train that course that's been created and to begin to take that role beyond the training and figure out the curation pieces. which leads me to the next piece, and probably the widest gap we have right now in terms of resources. We do not have or cannot say with confidence that we have the technology we need to really do this well and sustain it. And there are two pieces to that. First is the repository itself. And we don't have an easy way to capture this content, to catalog it, and then put it back out for faculty to review, collect, and figure out how to use. That's a key piece. We've got to figure that piece out, and that's broader than just Tidewater. We've got to figure out how to get that content organized in a way that any faculty member who wants to pursue creation and teaching of an OER course with us can go to that site, sort through that content, find it, and begin to use it. Second piece is the analytics. You know, in the back end of what we're doing, all of our content has to be in our LMS. It doesn't matter how the course is taught. And our courses are taught face-to-face, online, hybrid, but all that content needs to be in the LMS. In order for us to generate the data on the back end, to be able to produce a report with some analysis in it to give to the faculty member at the end of the course, that they can then use to make adjustments to that course, we've got to have the tools to simplify what that looks like and to turn those reports around in a timely fashion. Hand that off to the faculty member so they can use it before they teach it the next time. Or better yet, be able to give them analysis as the semester goes on and be able to adjust those courses. That too is a key critical component when you trace it back for us to our second goal and what we're trying to accomplish. You know, to help our faculty be even more effective teaching with OER in the way that you cannot be teaching with a textbook. And the last piece is, we're going to come out of our pilot at the end of this academic year. And when we come out of it, we're going to have some analysis that we'll share that will show, when you begin to line up other programs against what we've done in the business degree, what other degree programs and certificate programs we're going to be ready to add going beyond just the one degree. The open question there is going to be, do we have enough OER content in the gaps where we're seeing them to offer those other programs? And I suspect where we're going to see some gaps is in our career program areas. You know, when we start talking about high-speed manufacturing and what we do in welding and some of the other areas, maritime for us is a huge market. You know, we may have to create content in some of those areas in order to get to a point where we can continue to expand and offer entire programs solely with OER. So, I mean, in a nutshell, that's the resources that got us to where we are and moving forward. But I tell you, in all of that, it's more about the resources that we're saving and less about the resources that we've invested to get to where we are. Let me just share with you some numbers. We're in our fourth semester offering our Z degree in pilot mode. We have had to date 1,061 students finish. We've got another 630 in the current semester. We're building the schedule for the spring semester, and we'll add about 1,000 seats. By the time we're done in pilot mode, we will have had 2,500 plus students have gone through our Z degree program. Not the entire program, but courses. The ability is there to move through the entire program. Those students will have saved conservative, these are conservative numbers, the 2,500 at the end, will have saved in textbook costs a little over $255,000. In pilot mode, 2,500 students, $250,000. That's a drop in the bucket, though, when you look at how much students spend on textbooks. We looked at summer 2013, fall 2013, and spring 2014. Numbers from our bookstore. How much was spent on textbooks? 3 semesters, 1 college. $11,974,552. 1 college, 3 semesters. Just under $12 million in resources. 64% of that were students on some form of financial aid. Student loans, Pell money. You think about what we invested financially to get to where we are and what the potential savings are to students and taxpayers. There is no comparison. No comparison. You know, you'll hear some about an economic model. It's hard for me to think about an economic model and not look at the cost that a college like this spends every year on textbooks, with the monies that students spend. So it's more, I think, about the savings on the back end of this and the impact we can have. We're talking one college and what we've done. There's no reason, again, no reason in my mind why every college shouldn't have at least one program and growing the way we are, offering to their students the ability to complete an entire program without having to purchase a textbook. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Dr. DeMar. We're going to move on to Jennifer, and we believe we've got her slides relocated onto another format. Did it work like here? Yeah, for some reason it won't tighten up there.
Yeah, we need to figure out a way to put it on the screen. It's over the break. She put it on a jump drive for you.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, unfortunately, it's very. It's just very
Good morning, everybody.
multimedia.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I've never been here before. Actually,
Yeah.
it's really neat to see the building built over the pond. It's pretty exciting for me. Anyway, I am at Old Dominion University. Oh, there we go. I don't have to scream. Okay. I'm at Old Dominion University, and I teach teachers, so I'm in the College of Education. And as some of my colleagues were saying here, some of the challenges getting open educational resources. And I'm here to tell you about a way that you can potentially create your own with your students. So my students write the textbook for their course. I'll let that sit for a second. So could your students write the textbook for your course? Maybe. We're all here to talk about openness, right? That's our topic for today. So I'm going to give you your first openness challenge. We'll see how open you really are. I'd like you to be open by talking to your neighbor. Uh-oh, scary, right? What do you think about this idea of having your students write their own textbook? What benefits do you see? What possibilities? Let's consider the positive side. And then let's look at the scary side. What horrifies you about the idea of having your students write the textbook? So while I play with the technology up here, so hopefully I can show you my textbook, take a minute or two, say hi to your neighbor, maybe even meet somebody new. Again, we're being open, right? And talk about this potential positives and potential negatives.
He who does the work is the one who learns.
Okay, so what's the verdict?
All right.
You know, if you know your material.
I can't display your laptop.
Okay.
You'll have to use the root PC. This PC right here, so this keyboard and this mouse will do it.
Okay.
Is your presentation on there?
I wonder who owns it. So if I want to bring up a website.
Intellectual property, that's good.
So our, depends on the institutional policy, but our policy right now, because of oh look, there's something on the screen, right? Because of the way there's a court case in 2013 where a Stanford student had invented something and the university was losing all kinds of money to the student because of their invention. So the court settled in favor of the student, or I'm sorry, in favor of the university. So our policy had to reflect that case. So now student work is included in the course of
Coursework, as university, like your senior family, right?
for faculty members own their intellectual property
They're
for
grading
like
it.
traditional ones of scholarship. And then it's up to, it's great, but it's up to the department who funded it to say, yes, this is
Sounds
Can I still use this? They want to monetize a lot of things, and our new president, I think, is not so much for that. One of the questions that we've had is, if we create something, do we have to have it? Can we license it openly? Do we have to go through the Virginia Tech Intellectual Property Office and monetize it? Like,
Does Tech have a
if we want to
policy?
give it away, can we do that?
Does Tech have a policy like MIT, Princeton, and some of the others?
Intellectual property?
Well, no, about use of OER. Does not.
Totally off the rails. It's not, it's a, what we're trying to do, I think, is more of a cultural thing. It's better than nothing. It's not just understanding the conceptual foundations. That's what's compelling about OER. But you're creating something new. Is that from the beginning?
We say in our policy that faculty.
Okay, so have you passed your first challenge in openness?
We're open.
The people in the front row say they're open. Let me just real quickly get a couple of comments. What do you see as potential benefits of having your students create their own open educational resources? What could be a positive that you see? Go ahead.
The best way to learn is to share and to communicate what you learn.
Okay, great. It's a great way to learn, right? Go ahead.
Student-centered learning.
Yay, student-centered learning, right. Okay, now, go ahead. Okay, so maybe some deeper thinking, some reflection on those topics, great. Now, what about the horrify part? What scares you when you think about the idea of your students creating their own content? Thank you, well said, right? Who are that? He said disregard for the values of expertise, right? Suddenly our students are the experts, right? Go ahead. Okay, do you mean like copyright infringement or? I try to teach my students about copyright, but it is an uphill battle, and particularly because it's such a complicated area, but great point. And one more, go ahead.
I mean, negative student reviews, why didn't you teach me this course?
Yeah, I'm paying for this course, hello, aren't you supposed to be teaching it? Great, good point, go ahead. Right, okay. And they don't care, okay? Right, so you're supposed to cover this, and are the students really going to cover it well? Do they care? Right. Okay, so so writing your own text is a cognitively demanding activity, and it's a little bit easier to sit in a seat and have someone deliver information to you. It's a little more efficient. Go ahead.
More efficient, and they're right now into efficiency because of their other, so it's
Right.
student-centered sometimes.
Right, but maybe they're not so interested in student-centered. They're interested in give it to me as fast as I can so I can go to my job. Okay, good point. All right, let me talk with you for a minute here about a couple of benefits and drawbacks I see to this process. Okay, so benefits, and this was well stated by my colleagues already, saving money, right? That's a big motivator. Students in general don't like to read textbooks, at least that's what I've noticed. Maybe you've noticed that, I'm not sure. So theoretically, right, if they write the text themselves, maybe they'll be more motivated to actually read it, or I guess they've had to read the part that they wrote themselves at least. So that remains to be seen. And then this idea of student empowerment, kind of related to the student-centeredness there. When students are creating their own content, they have a voice in deciding what's important and what goes into the text. And normally that's just the role of the expert, right? That's just something that we as teachers decide. So in transferring some of this power to students, are students then able to make some of the decisions about what's important to them, for them to learn? Okay. Students can participate in the evaluation of the process. So normally we as the teachers, right, we get to determine whether students did a good job, whether the content's appropriate. In fact, we choose which textbooks to give our students. Rarely are students asked whether a textbook is good for them or not, which is kind of a funny idea because we give out these textbooks, but then the people who judge textbooks are the experts, the instructors, right? And rarely do we survey our students to say, hey, was this a good text for you? So the idea of involving students in that evaluation process might be on the road towards student-centeredness, possibly. Okay, and also just the idea of students seeing themselves in a new role. Can I be a contributor? Can I create content? Can I move towards expertise, although maybe not all the way there? Okay, also, writing a textbook for others to use is an authentic learning experience. It's not something that you do and then just turn into your teacher and you never see it again. There's no benefit, there's no real purpose besides that grade that you needed to earn. But in this case, you're actually engaging in an activity that will benefit your classmates, right? You're creating content that will be used by others. So students can't say, well, what's the purpose of this assignment? Why am I doing this, right? You've given them an authentic activity. Okay, so they have their work has a purpose beyond just turning it in to their teacher. And students are learning to give and receive feedback. Now we all know how important that is in our everyday lives and how difficult it can be to give somebody effective feedback, how uncomfortable that process may be, especially if it's our peer, we have to give that feedback face to face. So that process of engaging in giving others feedback and then also listening to what other people say about our work are valuable skills as well. They may not be those hard skills that are listed in our course syllabus. They might be in mine since I teach teachers. But I'm guessing in most professions that ability to give and receive feedback is valued. Okay, of course, technological prowess is another added benefit. We want our students to be conversant in 21st century skills. We want them to be successful in their professions. And if they're able to create digital content, to work with digital content, that's probably going to go a long way in their job interview. They pull out their iPad and, hey, here's this digital lesson I created for my peers. Kind of show that off. It demonstrates those communication and 21st century skills that they have and can bring to the marketplace. And in my case, my students can pass those skills on to their students. And you'll have to forgive me, I do have pre-K 6 background here, so there's all these pictures of charming little children. Okay. Some of the concerns, and you addressed many of these, is it going to be inaccurate? What information are they going to put in there? Is it incomplete? Are they missing things? Grammatically nightmarish? Yes, that's always a concern, definitely. Inappropriate content. Yeah, I've had some interesting videos included on students' pages before. So obviously those are things that you're going to have to deal with. Definitely, it's more work, and your point was well taken in the back. It's much easier to just sort of sit and absorb information than to generate it yourself. It's also more work on you as an instructor, so you have to figure out, is this a worthwhile endeavor for me or not? Okay, this is my 8th year. I saw that, I was like, wow, I must be really crazy. My 8th year having students write their own text. And each semester now, we create a new edition. And I'll talk in a couple of minutes that for me, I've decided that it's really more about process than product. So the final product is good. I'm proud of what my students do, but for me the value is really in the process of having them create this text. And for that reason, we put out a new edition each semester. And I've actually now started creating a new edition for each section of my classes. Maybe a little crazy here, so I'm actually creating now 3 new editions each semester. I have about 150 students participating, and this is a Foundations of Education course. So the nice thing about that is this is like a survey course, an intro course, which means there's a lot of room in the curriculum for students to pursue different topics. Now, I know some of you mentioned you have a tighter curriculum, you have exact things that you must cover, or else the whole chain of courses that comes after you, students have gaps in their learning. But for me, with an introductory survey course, it provides more flexibility for a project like this. So essentially what happens is my students are selecting a topic in education to write about. And I have a list. So it's not completely open, but I allow students to come up with other ideas that they might not see on that list. But they pick from that list, they do some research, so they're finding credible sources, and then they produce, and I used to call this a textbook article. I have since changed my terminology, and now I call it a textbook lesson, because again, my students are future teachers. And so this is housed like a textbook, but I said, I want you to think of it like a lesson, because you're gonna have learning targets, what you want your students to learn from this lesson that you're creating. You're gonna create your content, you'll include examples in there, you'll have some multiple choice questions to help the students review whether they actually learned the content that you were teaching them. So they create this lesson, and they're all housed together. And after students create them, and we go through a review process, I'll talk about that, then we have the final text that students read during the second half of the semester. Okay, we go through a pretty extensive peer review and peer evaluation process. And again, this goes back to that idea that I think students need to be involved in the evaluation process. So what I say to my students is, okay, you're creating a textbook, but is the textbook for me? No, right? It's not for me. I am not the intended audience. Who is the intended audience for your work? Your peers, right? So if you wrote this great article or lesson on Maria Montessori, and I think it's the best thing since sliced bread, but it puts your classmates to sleep, what's more important, right? My opinion or your classmates? Well, if this is a textbook for your classmates, I have to argue that their opinion is actually more valid, more important than mine. Okay, again, that turns that whole expertise thing and just makes a mess of it, doesn't it? But I tell my students, okay, I'm gonna help you through this process, but ultimately, you are gonna do the final evaluations of these lessons that are in this text. And you all will decide which of them make the final grade and are able to become official entries in our textbook. Okay, we're gonna see what happens now. Hopefully I'll be able to bring this up. I had all the pages cashed out for you so you could quickly see them, but oh boy, this is really gonna be a challenge. Which computer am I using? This one? Okay, I can't, I'm not good enough to be able to do this. I have to see what I'm doing. All right. Thank you. All right. And is it still open here? This one? Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's see if this works. Okay, so this is a textbook that my students created in the spring last year, and I don't know, can you guys still see? I should be able to sort of navigate from the side here. Well, okay, not that far. Okay. So it has a couple of sections here about the authors, the content, and then a help section. So about the authors, who are the authors? My students, right? So we have a nice little picture here. There's the authors, yay. Okay, and then each student has their own author page in the textbook. And the great thing about this initial assignment that they do is that it's a low stakes assignment that gets them used to learning the technology. Because if you want them to be able to focus on creating the content, they have to be comfortable with the technology first. So by having them create a page about their favorite subjects themselves, they gain those technological skills so that later they're able to focus more on the content of the topic that they're researching. So anyway, here's just one of my students. And as you can see, she's introducing herself. Gosh, this is really hard. Okay. Anyway, we get an idea here. I wanted to just show you a couple of the pages so you had an idea that they all look very different because they're able to be incredibly creative in this first assignment and use a number of different Web 2.0 tools. And I want to say, don't be afraid that you have to know how to use all of these tools. I show my students many, many different Web 2.0 tools, and I say, I'm not an expert in all of these, but here are lots of them, and you can use your classmates. I have some TAs that help me as well. You choose the tools that work for you, that you like, you figure them out, and I don't worry about being an expert in all of them. Okay, so all of their author pages look remarkably different. And again, that's just, something's beeping. Am I out of time already? Okay, I don't know what's beeping. Okay, anyway, that gives you a little bit of a picture of that first initial assignment. So, yeah, so the site, it's hosted right now in Google Sites, which we could call a Web 2.0 tool. I used to have it hosted on Wikibooks, which I was going to show you. So actually, if you Google social and cultural foundations and Wikibooks, so Google Wikibooks and social and cultural foundations, you can find the very first edition of this textbook from 2006. And it was great to have it in Wikibooks because it's more accessible. People can find it when they Google it, but my students had to write in Wiki code. And so I would basically get hate mail in my course evaluations that said, we hate Wiki code, all in capital letters with like 18 exclamations apart. And so, that's, I can't really hide that very easily, right? So I gradually moved. I had an independent tool that we used for a while, which was great, except my developer, who was this 21-year-old kid from Nevada, decided he didn't want to do it anymore, and nobody else could figure out how to support it. So I then learned, okay, I had a great tool with him. He was wonderful, but I really need something that I can manage myself, because if he had a date or whatever and couldn't help me, get the site back up, that was too bad for me. So I eventually moved to Google Sites, which I could manage and create myself, and there are lots of great wiki tools that are free for educators out there. Then yes, I have my students use whatever 2.0 tools they want to actually generate their content. So you saw Toondoo, you saw Glogster, you saw Tagxedo, you saw Wordle, you saw Dippity. I can't even remember what other ones were up there. So whatever ones they want to use to create their content. Okay, I need it again, sorry. Okay, then to give you an idea for their, this is an actual lesson. So like a regular lesson in a classroom, I suggest that they start out with an anticipatory set, something to, get people's attention. And so, here she's talking about the flipped classroom. That's the topic of her lesson. And she's asking students, does your classroom look like this or look like that? Which is a great anticipatory set. Then she's got her targets here. She's incorporated, I think this is a Glogster, and then I think she has a Prezi, okay, which we can't see. She uses a Prezi, just some regular text as well, her conclusion and review questions and her references. So what was great about her Prezi, which we can't see, is she actually went back and interviewed her high school teacher that used a flipped classroom model. And she showed pictures of her classroom and had the interview of her teacher talking about it. So it was a great way to provide a real example of what a flipped classroom looked like. All the lessons, again, do look different. People take different approaches. So this is a different student who wrote about Asperger's. And her son has Asperger's. And for special ed people, yes, it's actually changed. It's not called Asperger's anymore, but we'll go with that. And she interviews her son, which we can't see here either. But again, it gives us, firsthand account of a student with Asperger's talking about what that's like. And she's got the same thing here, all the learning targets and the information and impact and a little cartoon about, what it's like for her son in the classroom. Strategies, the whole deal. So students' lessons all look a little bit different, but they follow this same format. Okay, let's see. I don't know what's going to happen here. Okay, at the bottom of, this is Laura. At the bottom of Laura's lesson, you can see there are somewhere down here, there are peer reviews posted for her. So students are organized in groups, and within their groups, they complete peer reviews. And so these are face-to-face interactions. They do a peer review on paper first. They have a whole little, actually, can I see that back again? I'll try to click on it and see if I can open it. Sorry. Okay. They have a whole worksheet, essentially, that they fill out for the peer review. Does it look like it's doing anything? Okay, here we go. So they have a whole sheet that they fill out where they're evaluating all different sections of the lesson. And I've stopped making this mandatory, but I had, up until this current semester, also required them to give feedback using screencast technology. If you've ever used a screencast before, it captures what's on the screen as well as the voice, so that they could actually have somebody go through their lesson and then tell them what was, good and not so great about it. So they had this form in addition to the screencast video. I took the screencast video out because, again, I was getting hate mail in my evaluations about all the technology that I required my students to use. And then they have a big rubric, and we have practice using this rubric. We grade sample lessons and whatnot, so students are pretty familiar with the rubric. Anyway, so they get these formative peer reviews. Then they have an opportunity to talk with their group mates, have a discussion about that feedback that they received, ideas they have for changing their content, and then they create their final version of the lesson. So for the summative evaluation, then it's a little bit simpler. I'm trying to see if I can show you. Okay, sometimes they don't clean up their pages. Here, they've got their phone number still on there, right? But the way I have it is I've used Google Forms, and I've created a rating page, whoops, that we can't see. Okay, a pretty simple rating page that asks students to rate the lesson on 5 different criteria: importance, interest, credibility, writing quality, and pedagogy. And so then I use those ratings to determine both students' grades and also which lessons make the final cut and end up in the textbook. So that's the process they go through. They first do their author page to get used to the technology. Then they begin working on their page. They go through a couple of scaffolded assignments to just collect their resources. They create their draft. They're reviewed by their peers. They get feedback. They make changes. They put up their final copies. They're rated kind of anonymously then by people in the class. That establishes their grade and which articles make the final cut in the textbook. So that's the entire vetting process. And please, I have 1 minute, okay. Current slide. Okay, so let's see what's important to do. One of the reasons why I like openness, we talked about this already, is that I think it relates to control and power, and I like the idea of turning some of my authority as a teacher over to my students as a means to empower them. And so that's really, why I see this as being an open pedagogical practice, is because students have more of that ability to make these decisions about what's important to them, about what should count, what's quality, what they want to learn and what they value in their learning resources. Okay, I use constraints then to kind of focus their learning, because openness is cognitively demanding, absolutely. When we apply constraints, then I can decide where I want them to expend their energy. Okay, I mentioned already, for me, it's all about process. A couple of quotes here. Some of you might be familiar with Simmons and Downs, who created the first CMOOC up in Canada. But he says the people who are benefiting from these open educational resource initiatives are the people who are producing them. And so again, this is why I really value the process more so than the product. And some of you might be familiar with these guys as well. This is a pretty seminal article. The primary purpose of learner-generated content is to stimulate growth within the learners. So I really buy into those philosophies. And I've talked kind of why I have my students do this already. So you got the you got the gist on that. I do want you to know I'm not the only crazy one. Okay, there are other people equally crazy. So here's a whole list. Maybe this will help you as you're looking for more open educational resources. There are student-authored textbooks in other areas besides mine, so they're out there. I guess you can ask me questions later, but just quick takeaways. You find a platform that works for you. Your students will probably like engaging in this process. They may or may not read the text more. My students did read the text more when I surveyed them. I also did some empirical research to look at whether or not they learned the content, as well as students who used a traditional textbook, and the outcomes were about equal. They learned about the same amount of the course content, whether they used a traditional textbook, written by experts, or whether they created the content themselves. They actually did better on content that was specific to the book that they used, but overall, about equivalent. So why bother with this? Well, for me, it's some of those soft skills, right? Learning to give and receive feedback, the idea of making more choices about your content, being more actively involved as a generator of information and not just a consumer. Okay, so I think I'm out of time, but this is me. Feel free to email me or call me up if you want to learn more. And thanks for indulging me for my long presentation.
Thank you. We have about 15 minutes. We have about 15 minutes to pass the mics around. If people have questions in the audience that they'd like to ask, any of our panelists, Anita, Daniel, or Jennifer, about any of the subjects that they talked about.
So I have a question for you, Jennifer. We have a project at Mary Washington. We have a faculty member who has his students do a very similar thing. They actually take a Western civilization textbook and write supplements for it. And he's been doing this over a number of years. He's now actually started going back and having students improve what previous students have done. So are you having your students sort of look at previous work, or are they building completely from scratch every time?
I think everybody heard, right? Are we okay not to repeat? Okay, so a teacher at Mary Washington teaching Western Civ is having his students supplement the regular textbook and then go back and improve it over time. And so the question to me was, do I also have my students go back and improve what they created? I've used a couple of different models for this. One of the models that was really successful, and I'm not doing it for a couple of different reasons, but I had I used to have 5 different students, up to 5 different students write on the same topic. So let's say the topic was charter schools. So about 5 students could write on that same topic of charter schools, and then we would pick, based on those ratings, which one had the highest rating. And then that one would become the official lesson or the official article on charter schools. And then that one would carry over to the next semester and sort of compete against the other ones. Now, I don't have students go in and edit other people's content, and one of the reasons why is because I found that even in this climate of openness and Wikipedia, that students still have a very strong sense of ownership over their individual work. And when they go in and they, they edit somebody else's work, they don't have that same investment, they don't have that same maybe care, and then the authors often get upset with having their work edited by others, so we haven't quite moved everybody into the Wikipedia culture. So I found that it was more successful in my class to have students write their own individual lessons and then potentially use that competition model that I mentioned before, or in my case what was happening is there were so many articles and so much to rate, and then students got upset with that idea. They're like, you're turning me into a rating machine. So I had to figure out a way to sort of narrow down the actual numbers of lessons that needed to be vetted each semester, which is why I'm not still using that same model before. But I think, depending on the number of students you have and exactly what you do in your class, you could do something like that, because it was fairly successful, and then they had those models to go on from prior semesters.
Yeah, I have a question. Go for it, Andrew.
is for Anita. Not being within the library milieu, so to speak, but I got the impression that I guess there's two philosophies there that mirror faculty, in that you've got the people in the library system that the most important thing to do is to buy the best resources, which come nicely packaged and everything you need, because the publisher spent all this time doing whatever they needed to do. And then there's the OER approach, which, because it's not so turnkey, has this whole barrier to entry and more complexity to it. But at the end of the day, if there were a system in place that made that more turnkey, we might get more buy-in to it. So I guess the question is, how do you get to that point with the OER resources? Good luck.
Okay, so so the first
I'm hardly repeatable.
So the first task is to repeat what you said. Your question pertains to two different streams of production of teaching and learning materials. So the traditionally commercially published materials versus those that are published in sort of in a more open fashion.
More curated.
Okay, and how to move that direction?
The more traditional stuff is easy. That's that's where we run into the problem in all aspects. If the textbook is the center of the universe, then you just get the textbook.
Right.
However, as opposed to creating the resources and restructuring the courses. But at the library level, to me, it seems like the same thing. But the library would be a great model for moving everybody to say, okay, if we build this our own, we can save our students money, make them more part of the process, and in the library, make even the people in the library more involved in the process rather than just acquiring assets.
Great. So you're, just to reiterate, or try to,
Sorry.
That's okay. What you're saying is, I don't know what you were saying. Let me say this. We have a lot of authors of textbooks and other kinds of materials that are employed by the university. If there were a cultural shift so that those people could participate in publishing openly, and if they were interested in publishing openly, they have a number of incentives to not be interested in publishing openly, although most of them don't benefit tremendously financially from book publishing commercially. That is a place where libraries are looking to go, into more open monograph publishing and those kinds of things. Does that sort of
Jim, did
address
you have a
your-
question?
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Thank you, Diane. One of my questions is about textbooks, period. Is that the way, it's kind of like an assumption right now that, textbooks are the way to go digitally through OER, and why are we reproducing the textbook in a digital space when maybe that's not the best form for it? So that's for the whole panel.
Yeah.
Discuss.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I totally agree. If there are better learning materials that are more interactive, more effective, let's use those, let's develop those. Just because the textbook is a known entity, I think faculty know that what a textbook is, what it can do, how it works. It's not a mystery. Some of the other learning materials are more of a mystery. How do you implement these things? They're less familiar. I think that's why we've gravitated toward reproducing something that's known instead of inventing something totally new that can be even better.
I think part of the answer to your question is in the design of the course itself. We took our courses and stripped them down to the outcomes in the course and then found the resource matched to the outcome. We're not looking for a turnkey electronic textbook. It's a customized match between the best resource in the outcome. That's going to require more work, and hence the need for a repository to organize this content in a different way than we do in the library now.
Okay, we have a question up front here.
Oh, can I address that real quick?
Sure.
Okay, one thing, now students use YouTube as their favorite search engine, right? So to me, that's pretty telling that they'd rather have the content come to them as a video rather than text. So I think your question is really an interesting one, especially if that's students' preferred learning model. But I will say it's a heck of a lot more work for an instructor to compile all of those individual different resources and videos and what they might be. And if you have the option of, oh, look, here's a textbook, I mean, that's hours of your time that you're not spending now. So I agree, yes, it would be wonderful if we could, use the TED Talks and all the different resources that we have available to us. It's just, can we teach fewer classes and get more money? My provost is here somewhere.
Good. Question up front.
So let you go on the stream, so you guys don't have to repeat the question.
I was just going to, I wanted to ask Daniel about analytics. Is there are you collecting data to show that students are learning just as well, if not better? I mean, it's clear that it's a way to save money. So that's the question I want to ask. But if I could just say one quick thing, the outcome should, and it actually empowers instructors to use open ed, because you're deciding as the subject matter expert, back to being the authority and whatever, what the outcome should be for the students and what we want them to learn, and we're going to let that drive the resources that we use instead of the textbook companies deciding. It is harder, but it does give us more power. But I do want to know about the analytics, Daniel. Thank you.
So we track the normal things we do with our courses: retention, success, withdrawal, all of those indicators, and Linda may touch on some of this. They are equal to or better than, which was our benchmark, than what we do in the traditional classes. We are seeing no slippage whatsoever. In fact, early on, the data showed that we were retaining more students in the Z courses than we were in comparative courses. On the analytics piece, at the end of a course, the instructor gets a report, and it basically shows three things: what's working in the course, what is not working in the course, and then gives them some suggestions on either the design or other resources to use to improve the course. And it's all based on data that's being pulled right out of the LMS.
Does technology continue to be a big barrier, though, for some students to access the resources, or no?
I'm not hearing that, no. I mean, the content's accessible from any device. I think that most devices anyway that students are using.
Thank you. Thank you.
Question?
I'm curious about the economic model, particularly as it pertains to impact on the intellectual model, which is that, right? We all know the meme of the big evil textbook company and so on and so forth. But faculty produce that content. In the higher ed environment, faculty produce that content. For many of them at most institutions, production of that content is actually a requirement of them maintaining the work, right? So in the model here, where we're saying, well, now we're open, we've removed this, right? Aren't we really creating a model where we've hired an outside company, in this case Lumen, they come in, they now play the role of the textbook company, right, at a different construction of the cost. The faculty's intellectual work is subsumed to them, limiting the marketplace of ideas, right? The faculty marketplace of ideas is now restricted to the employer, and so while we think of it as we're reducing costs, saving costs, are we necessarily really doing that? And aren't we simply moving the cost, right? We're squeezing the cost savings out of the faculty, which is where it's always been for 30, 40 years running on, when the real burgeoning of costs in education is the administration, right? And we're hiring outside organizations to come in and then run this. And I know that's a very skeptical question to ask you about it, but I think it has to be asked because, there is an impact there. We're changing a model for people who aren't just teachers, but they're content producers. What they do right? Very fundamentally is produce content, and they change our society with their academic endeavor.
Thank you.
Daniel?
I'm looking at you.
I don't see it that way at all.
Well, I know you don't,
Well, it's not just that I don't, but the content is, I mean, Lumen doesn't produce content. We're not buying content from them. Content resides in the open domain. We're pulling it down and using it in a smarter way. I can't get my mind around the way you pose that. There's no,
And how are they financially? These OER experts are faculty that have content expertise, just like you and the rest of us in spring. Many folks are saying, we're going to create content and make it available for free, not expecting content to be rewarded. So the content that is out there is out there.
I have a question for you, Anita, but about this question. I don't think we can look at the publisher model as something that really benefits faculty. And it certainly doesn't benefit students when you have a textbook, whether it's produced by a faculty, that they can't afford. And so student success here at the community colleges is being dramatic, and I'm with the community colleges, by the way, being dramatically impacted by the cost of textbooks. So, and the other thing I'm hearing too from all these panels is this is not mandatory, and that's an important point, that faculty who are participating in this, the faculty in this room, are all doing this because they see that connection between their work and student success. And one other thing is that they're open ed resources, so you're kind of building on other people's work, right? So you may have some brilliant ideas in your biology text that you can share, and then someone else can take that and build even a better biology book. So it kind of accumulates that way, the way I see it. But I think all these models are fine. If a faculty member writes some brilliant textbook and wants to publish it and make, whatever they deserve for that, I think that does not end that model. But I think what we see is publishers have taken advantage of the situation for years and years and years, and have, if you look at the cost of textbooks, it's just unsustainable. Something has to be done. And Jim's point, it's not really about content that much anymore. I mean, the content is out there. It's what you do with it. It's writing your own textbooks. It's interacting with it that I think we have to start moving towards. And there's my question. And I'm Richard Sebastian. I'm a Director of Teaching and Learning Technologies for the BCCS. And I'm wondering, Anita, do you work with the Library of Virginia, the Virtual Library of Virginia, with the Viva group, as far as with your OER efforts? Have you contacted them?
I am familiar with it. I have reached out to the Virginia Scholarly Communication Network to find people, but I have found only a couple. So in the four-year colleges anyway.
Yeah, it's something you might want to do, because we have some board members there who are really interested in OER. And Viva, as you know, is a way to really, it's a gem here in Virginia that really helps us keep costs down for a lot of resources.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time for this panel. We're scheduled to take a 15-minute break and come back at 10:15 to start with the next panel. So I encourage you all to seek them out during lunchtime and ask them any additional questions. So thank you very much to all three of you.
I'm sure I saw interest of our faculty here. So
Okay, great.
we can teach them how to